I think we're live.
We are.
Yay. Yeah. Well, hello everyone who's listening. I hope you're listening and recording. And I have Irene here with me. She's a sex and intimacy coach. And we had a conversation about losing desire in long term relationships about a few months ago. And I had so much fun talking to Irene, and just I feel like we're resonating, you know? And just our views really align. So I wanted to invite Irene to talk another topic, and that's another expertise area of Irene's, right? And that's low desire in women. And I that's even like research wise, everything wise, it's a huge issue. Like especially after you have kids, most most couples who come in for help, like they usually and they have libido differences, it's usually the women who doesn't want to have sex, right? And Irene said she had as we were going live, she said like, oh, I have personal experience with that. So I would love to hear some just her experience from her and her clients' work. Like how often does it happen in your experience, in your life, in your with your clients?
Well, thank you so much for having me and
Yay.
inviting me to another awesome conversation. Yes, so I went through my own experience of losing my libido. And really, well, at that time, I thought I was the only one. I thought I was broken. I thought that there was something wrong with me and my sexuality and who I am as a woman. But later on, when I went through my sexual journey and then started to do this work, I started to see the exact same patterns happen with women and with couples.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
the pattern is typically this. You start a relationship and things are exciting in the beginning, right? You're spending all this
Mm-hmm.
time together. You're texting each other, or before text was available, you were on the phone all night long with each other. You are talking about things. You're hanging out in the movies, making out. Who cares about the movie? You are going away on weekends, on weekend trips to be with each other. Again, there's so much attention, there's excitement, there's just this novelty. You're maybe falling in love. And so,
Mm-hmm. You in bed for hours and hours. You meet. You can kiss for an hour straight, right? Like the whole thing.
exactly.
Yeah.
And you spend sleepless nights together having sex, and then you run on fumes during the day, somehow still productive. Like it's this beautiful stage in the beginning. And here's the thing, women's libido looks quite the same as a men's libido at that time. She is just as excited to have sex and be physical and all of that. And that was certainly true for me.
Mm-hmm.
And in the beginning of my relationship with the man who became my husband, that was certainly the case. And I hadn't had much sexual experience until then. And I thought, oh my God, I love sex. This is amazing. And again, my libido was off the charts. Like I wanted to have sex all the time. And then our relationship started to get deeper and started to get more, um, we moved in together, we acquired responsibilities, our place, we got a dog, we got chickens. This was at the time when I was living in the Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
And something started to shift. My interest in sex started to wane. Well, first, actually, I started to lose lubrication. I went to the doctor
Mm-hmm.
and I was told this is normal, just use lube. Okay. So I started to use lube, but then my body was, the lack of wetness was really lack of arousal.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I was using lube to lubricate penetration, but the arousal wasn't there. So I started to
Yeah.
get pain during sex, during penetration, which then also added to the waning of sexual desire.
Mm-hmm.
There was something else that was happening in the relationship piece. All those spontaneous moments, all that fun, all that touch, all that, like you said, hours of kissing and making out, that started to drop.
Mm-hmm.
We started to just get into a rhythm of things where we go to work and do our thing and we come home and spend an hour together. And so connection started to drop.
Mhm.
We're on the phone for hours. And then what went up is responsibilities
Mhm.
and opportunities for disagreement, and then not being heard and not being seen, not being understood, and resentments.
Mhm. Yeah, and if you add kids to the mix, that's a total like killer.
Absolutely, because that's
Yeah.
like responsibilities times 1,000,
24/7.
24/7 for so many years, if not forever.
Yeah.
And so here is where this was parallel to my libido starting to drop. And this is what happens to couples. So this is now a period where the woman is like, wow, I don't want to have sex. Wow, I'd rather sleep. I'd rather do something else. Um, and like there are moments when they go on vacation, when they start having a little bit of a semblance of that old way, the way it was in the beginning. But that's again because responsibilities go down and then fun
Mhm.
and attention go up. But then
Mhm.
it goes
Mhm.
right back when they come home. And
Yeah.
her libido looks non-existent. And
So
so
it sounds like it's a like it's a number of factors. So it's not one factor that's causing it, but it's all of it, all the all the all the pieces of the puzzle that kind of leads to this woman just feeling not excited about sex.
exactly. And I would say it's about, let's say it's about three here. So it's attention,
Mm-hmm.
listening, being there, like looking at each other and not caring who else or what else is out there, but having that, eye to eye connection,
Intimacy. Mm-hmm.
intimacy,
Intimacy.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Emotional sharing, which is another facet of intimacy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Talking about what's in your heart, talking about your emotions, talking about your desires and fears.
Right, being vulnerable with each other, showing the deeper aspects of yourself that are sometimes hidden, but with your partner, you can really let the guards down and be yourself, and that creates that juicy emotional flow.
Exactly, exactly. And the third one is touch. Again, it's those 2 hours in the movie theater. Who cares about the movie? You're making out just because it's so amazing and fun. Or
Mm-hmm.
holding hands, or giving hugs, or laying in bed, spending the weekend in bed, lazily kind of going in and out of making love. So these three things in a modern relationship, they're left to literally like the last 10 minutes of the couple's day. Once they've done everything else, once they've
Mm-hmm.
taken care of everyone else, and then they have the last 10 minutes of complete exhaustion to fulfill these three things,
Yeah.
which is, of course, absolutely absurd and impossible. And
And
so the
it becomes like another to-do item. Like, oh, you know,
yeah,
go shopping, have
yeah,
sex,
yeah,
pick up kids.
yeah.
Yeah.
Without the fun part, it just becomes another responsibility, another to-do list. And then again, responsibilities are up, and then resentment is up. So these are the two things on this other side, which weigh very heavily, certainly
Yeah.
the responsibilities and resentments. And so back to the topic that we're here about is low libido. Well, couples trip themselves up because truly they think that the way it is in the beginning, it's going to last. But that's truly false advertising.
Mm-hmm.
You're on drugs. You are high in the beginning of the relationship. That's not how it's going to be. And women's libido, I love Emily Nagoski's work in her book, Come As You Are, where she identifies that men's sexual desire is primarily spontaneous. Poof, it just arises and they get hard and they're able to have sex. But women's sexual desire is responsive. And it's
Mm-hmm.
responsive to these things that I just mentioned. And
Mm-hmm.
the important thing that this is what I teach and what I help my couples do is you need an infrastructure that prioritizes these things, the attention, the connection, and the touch. And that allows you to lower resentment and not responsibilities don't go away, of course, but
Mm-hmm.
learning on this side, it's learning how to ask for support, create a home infrastructure where you share responsibilities, where you share household chores, where you get support, that you're not
Mm-hmm.
carrying the responsibility on your own shoulders 24/7. And
Right.
yeah, and create the infrastructure. And this infrastructure serves women's libido.
Yeah.
Women's libido, it's kind of like I think of it as you're caring for a Ferrari. You don't want to buy a Ferrari and drive it 20 miles an hour. You don't want to keep it outside where there's snow and hail. You don't want to just run regular oil or regular gasoline in it. You need to do very specific maintenance. And honestly, women's libido requires exquisite attention and exquisite maintenance.
Yeah.
And traditionally, we give women's libido the treatment that the Dutch people here where I live give to their bicycles. They stand in the rain, the chain is unoiled, these things are just rusting, but they use them to go between places. They're just for use, for everyday use.
So I'm curious about this, since we're kind of focusing on the woman today versus like the couple last time. And sometimes it happens. So I totally agree with you and like resonating. And in the book that I haven't read Come As You Are yet, it's on my list, but I've read Vagina, right? Another female-centered, female sexuality-centered book. And that's exactly, they aligned in terms of like, she said, okay, there's this goddess array, right? And man helps to create, men help to create the libido, like because they need to, when they look in her eyes, and she mentioned the experience when the healer, the sexuality healer, looked in her and said like, you're a goddess, and sort of like this reverence for female sexuality, that it's a sacred thing, and a man treats you that way, it helps with like stirring up the fire, right? So attending to the fire. And I totally agree with that. And as I was reading, I was like, well, and what about women who are in relationship now and their men are not interested in their work? They just say, yeah, it sounds great, but it's a lot of work and I'm busy. And I don't feel like doing it. And what about me? And all this stuff where she like, what can a woman do if she's just she started a relationship and it wasn't like sort of the pattern, right? And now she wants that. Well, what are some ways you worked with individual women to help them through that, like taking the power back over the libido while also needing a man to help with that?
Yeah, and this is a hard question because, like you said, you need two people. It takes two people to create sex, and it takes two people to take it to the next level. And where I'll start with some of the mistakes that I see that women make around getting men to do this work. One is that because I used to do the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
um, we focus on the therapy or the coaching. I want us to go to therapy. I want us to do the coaching. I want us to see a sex therapist. And it becomes a conversation of convincing him to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, just generally speaking, very few men are going to be like, yes, let's go to therapy. Let's go process the hell out of all of
let's talk, let's go talk about our feelings. I
exactly.
can't wait to do that.
Exactly. So just the idea of it is going to turn most men off. But what they don't realize, and this is where we as women can make um, a lot of in ways with our partners, is structuring it from the perspective of what this will actually create, and linking it to our own happiness and linking it to our own satisfaction. I don't just want
And their happiness, right? Their satisfaction, right?
our relationship.
Yeah.
Then I want to learn more about I want to learn more about my body with you.
Yeah.
I want to learn how to want more sex with you.
Yeah, right.
Going to improve our relationship.
And I was thinking about the effective like communication skills tools that I use, and It's like like creating this like common vision that like I love us. Like I love, so starting with like the positive like aspects. I love how we parent together. I love that we are partners together. I want to spend my life with you, and I want to have great sex. Like I think we would really like our both of our satisfaction would just go so much, be so much higher if we add the sexual aspect first. So focus on that, and then let's talk about how we can get there, right?
Exactly.
Maybe don't even bring the therapy and coaching up. Yeah, just
Exactly.
to put like a vision, like that's what I want us to be. What do you think? And maybe they suggest it.
I love it. Yeah, you focus on the vision. You focus on what it is that you want, what's important to you, what it provides. And like you said, yeah, wow, they might actually suggest that themselves. Yeah,
Yeah, and think it's their idea.
exactly. Exactly.
And it's maybe like say like, don't you want that, right? Like, don't what is it that you want? Like,
Mhm.
what's your vision? And have that shared vision, because I think that the struggle, I don't know if you see it, but I think a lot of times women are already resentful. I mean, I certainly have been, where I'm already feel like I'm not giving enough, so I'm already like, well, he's not gonna do that, he doesn't care about me. So it's like the story is already there. From that place, it's very hard to like really ask from like an open place, right? So you already have the story and you kind of like, well, do you want to do this? Because I don't think you would, because you don't love me. So that's like brings up the defensiveness, right?
Yeah. So it is important to do your own work first to clear
Mm-hmm.
that resentment so that you're coming from a clean place, from a neutral place, rather
Mm-hmm.
than harboring resentment or feeling like you're overstepping your own boundaries or your own like honoring of yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's the work that you would do individually, right? With someone, if you work individually with women, you work on resentments and getting her to the place where she can ask in a non-blaming kind of way, right?
Exactly. In
Mm-hmm.
non blaming and inviting and opening. And here's the thing in terms of relationships, we want men to be vulnerable with us, but we wait for them to be vulnerable. And
Mm-hmm.
that's actually against their biological makeup. Testosterone does not allow you to be vulnerable. Testosterone wouldn't, well, just in virtue of testosterone, you're more equipped to close off your feelings, to protect inside, to kind of go into battle, to go hunt the mammoth, kind of our like evolutionary biological makeup. So for men to open up to vulnerability, they have to feel very safe. They can't feel
Mm-hmm.
threatened at the same time as they're vulnerable. We can't open up as we're closed off. So
Definitely.
it behooves us as women for whom vulnerability and emotional openness is a lot easier. Not always, not for
Mm-hmm.
everyone, but generally speaking, it's a lot easier for us to lead in vulnerability, which creates the safety for men to relax, like, oh, well, if she's vulnerable, I can be vulnerable too,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
match us in that vulnerability, creating intimacy.
Yeah.
We not wait for men to be vulnerable first, nor should we. It shouldn't be a transactional relationship,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You
A
do
lot
this,
of
I'll do
yeah.
this. We'll kind of
Yeah.
trade. Lead with
Yeah.
your vulnerability. Honor yourself and lead with your own vulnerability. And really, such magic happens when that plays out that way.
Yeah, and I'm fascinated how much power a woman has really in a relationship. How much she can change, because sometimes I hear this argument, well, he doesn't want to change, so we're not gonna change. And I said, well, if you do the work and work on your side, like to be able to be vulnerable first, then a lot can change really, because when you change relationship changes your 50% of the relationship at
Exactly.
least. Well, usually like 50-50. So, and it's also, but it's also like I find it's most helps when a woman wants to do this work for herself, right? Because if they always looking at the partner and saying, well, I'm only going to change if they change or to change, that's can lead to disappointments because we can't control the other person or what happens to the other person. But if you are able to be emotionally vulnerable with yourself, that feels pretty good, even for yourself, right? So there are benefits.
Yeah. And the way out of resentment is to honor yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That so much of resentment comes from expecting others to do things, but so much also comes from having um, having given part of yourself up, having given away part, like having given away yourself, having done more than you really were available for, putting yourself out more than again was really true to you. And so we resent ourselves, but then we project that resentment onto our partners. So the way to counteract that is to start honoring yourself.
Honoring yourself, yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, and you know, to your question of like, what can you do with a partner who's not really interested in it? Ask for what you want and set boundaries. Like, hey, I'm not. You know, I talked about friction sex, for example, last time we met.
Yeah.
Tell your partner, hey, this kind of sex doesn't work for me. I won't engage in this. I need us to find a different way. You don't.
That's a boundary too, right? That's boundaries.
Absolutely. And I wanted to also mention, as a little side note, you used the word change. I think that's what one of the most threatening things about doing this work is that things are going to change. And naturally, we're all really scared of change.
Yeah.
So taking that word out of the vocabulary around this, but focusing on your own pleasure. It's like, I'm not able to do friction sex anymore. I really want to be able to enjoy this more and feel more relaxed and have my body light up and have, you know, kiss you more, connect more, have more pleasure. Focus on what it is that you want and what the benefits are. And it's really important to stand your ground, because this is what happens. And again, I've been in this situation so many times. Something is not working, but we still put ourselves in the same situation.
Yeah.
And I start working.
Oh, go ahead. I was just, yeah, go ahead. And I had another thought. But,
just as an example, like when a lot of women start working with me, they have had painful sex with their partners for years. And of course, this creates such negative spirals. And so it's really important to stop doing what's no longer working for you and insist that something needs to change. But if you keep doing it, it's only going to make things worse.
Well, I don't know. Well, I just thought about something because of the topic too that I picked. Like, is it normal? And sometimes we have our libido, like as you said in the beginning of relationship, and usually that period is like heightened for some people. And sometimes there's a woman who just never had that, right? And she might think, or it might be the case that it's naturally her like predisposition, like we all have variety to our libido. So I'm curious, like when is it that it's just the nature? Like how can we distinguish when it's just the nature? And I can think with you as well. I'm asking this question as well to both of us, like, so sometimes it's just our nature that we just, there's us asexual people, and sometimes it's like there's a fire inside, but it's hidden and it's suppressed. So just knowing, like, how do we know the difference? Because the women who consider themselves that way, they might not even reach out for help, but their partners will. But they just say, well, it's just the way I am. I'm not interested in sex. And maybe this. So I don't know if you I mean, I can think about out loud about my theories about that, but I don't know if you have any ideas how to distinguish the two and know.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And what comes to mind first is that it is hard to distinguish. If someone has never experienced uh, an expression of the libido in any way, it's natural to conclude, well, I'm just not sexual, or yeah, I enjoy it, once in a while, but really I don't miss it. I don't lack, something like that. Um, and I've known many women who for decades thought that they had no sexual desire, and then they met a partner who could evoke that in them, who can turn the lights on, right, or stoke the fire. So I won't make conclusions on percentages or how things are, but I've definitely seen the latter happen many times, where women were partnered with men or other women or other genders, where there was a connection over hobbies and fun things and an emotional connection, but the sexual connection wasn't a match, or it was a match of people that both kind of didn't care much for sex. And it points to that they've never had the right, again, the kind of the match that would light the fire until someone else came along. And this is what I see with so many of my couples, because the people who come to coaching, they either have a sense that there's something more that's available from very early age. Like, I knew that there's something about sex that's
Right.
there. So they either have that, or they have a desire to understand it and experience it. So it's very hard to say, because not so few people have that. All of us
It's
have
hard, right?
it, or is it just a few of us have it? I don't know.
We certainly can't like make statements that are for everyone, but I think also for me, like sexual energy is life energy. So when I know like my libido is affected is when I feel dull, is I feel like everything's kind of blah, and the colors are not as bright. That means there's not enough like life energy circulating, and the when the life energy kind of circulates, like that's the including the libido, everything is just starts to flow in that way. So I don't know if people with just low libido, so for me, if it's like similar to you, I just had a sense that this is not like fully alive. So I want to be fully alive, and the way I feel this way is just not fully alive. And usually when I feel fully alive, it's a higher libido state for me. It might be different for everyone, but certainly there was this sense, like you said, there was just this sense that fully alive is somewhere, somewhere available, and I just need to know how to get there.
And I want to add too, an historical perspective to this, that for thousands of years, women's libido has been seen as dangerous, as sinful, as women were considered loose and dangerous, and all of that. And so I think that trauma is still there. It has been passed for thousands
in
of years.
In vaginas, in our vaginas. That's what.
Absolutely. Specifically in the tightness of it. That we are so tight, that women generally still in 2021, we live under so much threat. Like what happened in in England with a woman being killed on the street, and women speaking out that we walk with keys in our pockets to make it look like it's a knife. But there's still so much threat that we experience on a regular daily basis.
Yeah.
And that's certainly carries on in our bodies, in that tightness and the constriction. We're bracing for threat, for violence.
Right.
And
Right.
I this is my hunch, my intuitive hunch is that that has a big influence of how how asleep women's libido is, because it's hiding.
Hiding. Yeah. So agree with that. It's um that's the book covers it, like goes very detailed into the history and how even the word vagina has been so, like, it's been given, that part of our body has been given so many different names, and it's still not okay to say it. It's like there's something like, oh, something dirty about it, and changing that perspective in your head first. Like it starts with you, right? Like, so if women change that and the relationship with a part of our body, that's like amazing change. And I also wondering if you, in your work with women, and I know you have a program, we'll post a link, right, for women. You have like a course or something for libido. If you include some kind of self, like yoni massage, or some kind of practice that helps with the tightness that you can do on your own, because there's has been like eggs. I know at one point it was super popular. You would see like those yoni eggs everywhere, and just kind of what you sense with that. Do you like recommend it to your clients? Is there practice that women who listen to this can do on their own to help them release that tightness and expand their their sensitivity and the energy to keep it flowing?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is part of the program. And it doesn't just start with the pussy, which is the word that I use for
Mm-hmm.
the entire genitals, but it starts from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I started to see when I started to work with women is how generally disconnected we all are from pleasure, not just sexual pleasure. That's like downstream, but pleasure in general, and ability to enjoy our own bodies, like enjoy our skin, enjoy our
Receive, right? Receive pleasure, like take it in,
yeah.
savor it. Mm-hmm.
Most women
Chocolate.
touch their bodies except in the shower, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we started with all these different experiences. There's specifically 14 experiences in that program where I guide women of connecting to their bodies and pleasure. And one of them is
Mm-hmm.
this kind of very slow experiential connection to the pussy, and like how it feels in your fingers, and what it's like to touch the different folds and the different the different areas, and how is it to go faster and slower, how is it to pull and to push and with pressure, and to in the end be able to have a sensual experience with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the kind of masturbation that I'm a fan of, where it's creating a sensual, pleasure filled experience where you go on a journey of your body rather than you get off in a couple of minutes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this speaks to my approach that we need to learn to build arousal in our bodies. That quickly getting off is not building arousal. Quickly getting off is releasing energy. It's energy out. We
Yeah.
need to learn how to build arousal, build sexual energy, so that if you think of a cup, it gets full and then it overflows.
Mm-hmm.
That's a
Mm-hmm.
very different sexual experience when your body is aroused, when there's certainly blood in the genitals, when the nipples are sensitive. But what also happens with arousal is we got our skin becomes more sensitive, so it we can receive more pleasure. The mind shuts down and we go into a more alternate state of consciousness where it doesn't matter how big our butt is, it doesn't matter
Mm-hmm. All
how
the
long
responsibilities, yeah, go
straight,
away.
everything goes away, and the pain threshold goes up when
Mm-hmm.
we're in high states of arousal. So naturally, like for example, during the middle of the day, if someone came to pinch your nipples, you would not enjoy that. You might hit them in the face for that.
Yeah. Especially without permission.
Exactly. It'd be like, whoa, ouch.
Yeah.
But we can have a nipple orgasm when we're highly aroused, and it can
Mm.
feel incredibly, incredibly pleasurable.
Mm-hmm.
So with the pain threshold up and the alternate states of consciousness and the body being so pumped with blood, again, it creates a different kind of sex. And you know, unaroused, I'll speak from my own experience. Unaroused, I can handle about 3 minutes of penetration, and then I get sore, and it starts. With arousal, it's incredibly pleasurable for 40 minutes to an hour, and that's when I can have a vaginal orgasm. And when I'm like fucked into a place where like I meet God. But that requires high levels of arousal.
Yeah. So I was gonna ask, like, or say, or assume, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that building up of arousal, it is attending to the fire, the goddess array, that all those things, the attention, the you feeling very safe and relaxed in your body, you feeling cared for and sort of contained and safe, right? And so you can start to relax, the body starts to relax, and then the arousal builds. And it starts with a connection, emotional connection, maybe some gentle touches first. So it's very hard to achieve in the 5 minutes of a foreplay before penetration. Yes, yes, it's a slow, slow process.
And what our bodies need is pussy worshiping. We need time, slow time, without a goal, without trying to get us off, but time to do a massage, a pussy massage, or do a practice such as many may have heard of orgasmic meditation with the clitoris stroked. Any kind of tantra practices, specifically focusing on the genitals. And two things I want to mention about that. One is that it's doing it slowly without a goal. And the second thing is doing it in the context when the man is not aroused.
Because it's so easy to feel the pressure, right? When
exactly, and our bodies will naturally contract when a man gets aroused, because what's happening, his testosterone is pumping. And when a man's testosterone is pumping, that's a threat to a woman who is not aroused.
Right.
Oh, you're all of a sudden much bigger and stronger than I am just because of the pumping testosterone.
Right.
And wow, I have to do whatever you tell me to do because I'm scared for myself. We're not thinking that way, but the body will naturally brace against.
Does it normally happen? Like the man's body would naturally start arousal? I don't know. I'm just trying to think, like, how can it's not something you can control, right? The arousal. And so maybe what would be like a practice for that? Like start very slow, so it's not like that arousing, just very gentle. Right? What would you recommend there?
Yeah, very gentle and slow is important. This is true with tantra practices, and again, the practice I mentioned, orgasmic meditation. You start clothed. You start with
closed, right?
And also, it's one way in a lot of these different practices, so that there's no responsibility and no pressure that for the woman to relax. Oh, and then she has to give to him. One-sided, to really allow the worshiping to happen towards her. And this is my own experience, and the experience of so many women I work with. Again, when you fill your cup, when you can create that infrastructure, including these practices, to allow yourself and allow your partner to really fill your cup, it will overflow. You will rip his cup, and it'll take 2 seconds to get hard and be ready for sex. So
Right. And having sex with a woman who's aroused is much more pleasurable than with a woman who's not. It's that's when they both meet God, right? Because through the arousal, that's where the again the fire that heats them both up. That's what I've heard described in various tantra practices, is that when you really arouse a woman, that arousal will, like you say, spill over, and the man will also benefit from it. Again, selling this to men, like, oh, there's a lot for you here too. It's not, you know, sort of like creates, it's for both, for enhanced pleasure for both.
and it's nourishing pleasure.
Nourishing, yeah.
Pleasure in getting off very quickly, but it's kind of pleasure that you get from scratching an itch. Whereas the pleasure that you're talking about, like at the end of this arousal journey, it's nourishing. It's him having contributed, having supported woman's pleasure, and then she comes alive and is excited and is present and is like can't keep her hands off each other, or can't keep her hands off of him. And that's what men really want.
Yeah.
A lot of men think that all they want is to get off, but the true nourishment is in that sexual energy, that connection, and that excitement of the woman.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why men love porn, because there is like it looks like she's really enjoying it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm like, it's all fake. She's not enjoying it. Like, look at, she's all tense. So I actually think there will be, that's like another, if I wasn't like a therapist already, I would probably should like, can you imagine like if it was really a woman enjoying it, and you like make a film of that? That's a treat, right? That's something I would watch.
And most men want that. And again, that's the thing that's going to draw men to do this work, is like, hey, I want that. And I want that with you.
Right.
Rather than let's go to coaching or therapy.
Yeah. That's a great reframe, right? Like what to focus on. And yeah, I think it's a good place to wrap up. It's been already 45 minutes, I think we've been talking, but time flies with you, Irene. Yeah, I hope we inspired some people to, well, it certainly inspired me to dig into these practices, to have this kind of sex, because it is nurturing on so many levels. And it seems like Irene is already having that, so she's good. She's teaching others. So I'll post a link to your course that helps you to get that. And I also work with more psychological aspects of that, right? Like what I work with like self-worthiness first. So because for me, in order to get to the point where I can allow receiving, I needed to do a whole lot of self-worthiness work just to feel that I'm worthy of pleasure. So that's kind of the part I usually focus on. Yeah.
There's a reason why sex and money are always linked, because it's about worthiness.
Yeah.
The building block of being able to receive both wealth in financial ways and then wealth in sex and pleasure.
Yeah. And receiving, just like we always receiving, right? Like receiving the rain today, receiving like clothes on my skin. So there's constantly this interchange, but we feel blocked. I know I was blocked in receiving for many years. I can't take it in because the channel sort of not open. So that's the work, right? To do the work so you can receive pleasure, receive great sex, or receive great relationships. I feel worthy. So thank you so much, Irene. We've been talking about doing a clubhouse room. So if you people on Clubhouse, you can find me or Irene there, follow us, and we'll keep you posted about the conversation there, which is really exciting.
I'm looking forward to it. Our conversations have been amazing, so another one will be fantastic.
Yeah, we'll do more. We'll do more. Thank you so much, Irene. So good to have you. Bye. 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 Bye, everyone.